What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Protect and Serve. I'm Maya May. I'm here with Michael Fanone. Mike, how you doing? ICE is fucking up lately. A lot.
Yeah, I think we need to rename the podcast. The ICE is fucking up everything podcast because it seems that wasn't the intention when we originally came up with this idea. But again, we have this agency that's unaccountable to the American people, that's acting and behaving in such an egregious manner that it seems to have consumed all of our conversation, and I'm rightfully so.
Yeah.
Um,
And they're fucking up everywhere across the board. So in Chicago, in Portland, in the suburbs. I just saw that they've been told now that they're going to have to wear body cameras. A judge, I think it was Judge Ellis in Chicago, said they'll have to
mhm.
wear body cameras. Do you think that's going to actually happen?
No, I don't. And if they do end up wearing body worn cameras, I think that'll be the extent of it. They'll actually put them on. They'll adorn their military style uniforms with the body worn camera. But I mean, if you look at the record of this agency, um, they have lied to the American people uh, time and time again. Um, I mean, most recently, I'll say that, probably one of the most egregious examples, and we can talk about this later on, is you remember that raid that took place in Chicago where they had the Black Hawk helicopters, they had ICE agents rappelling from the helicopters onto the rooftop of this apartment building that the administration said was infested with Tren de Aragua gang members. And now we have the facts. And the facts are that there was one out of all of these people whose lives were forever
Upended, destroyed in many ways.
traumatized
Yep.
traumatized by this event, one loosely affiliated individual that they can't even say definitively, and that means by the standard that the federal government traditionally held by the Department of Justice, they can't even say was a validated Tren de Aragua gang member. Um,
And this is something perfect to talk about tonight with tonight's guest because we have someone who is an expert in the war on drugs and the militarization of the police. So we'll talk about that more with him. But I want this budget that ICE has. Like theoretically, they could be doing things the right way. They could use the body cameras and have them going. And so they've obviously chosen a different route, and everybody sees it. So my question is, when are police captains, police chiefs, we were talking about this before the show, when are they going to start speaking out against what ICE is doing in their jurisdictions?
that's the $1 million question. I mean, that is, I've talked about it a lot this week. Um, I'm incredibly disappointed in the law enforcement community, um, in their lack of, and I'm talking about state, local, uh, law enforcement agencies, and their lack of, um, response to the way that this agency is conducting itself. I mean, obviously, I'm disappointed in agencies like my former employer, the Metropolitan Police Department, because when ICE was operating and still continues to this day to operate in Washington D.C. and has co-opted the Metropolitan Police Department and other agencies in Washington D.C. to essentially join them in their efforts. Um, Rather than staying silent, why not talk about why it is that state and local law enforcement agencies don't participate in these types of immigration enforcement efforts? And it's because these police departments are responsible for the public safety of all the residents of their community. I've had a couple conversation with some MAGA folks this week, and their response is, well, no, they're not. They're not responsible to keep people safe in these communities if they're here unlawfully or illegally. And my response to them is this: well, I disagree with you, obviously, but let's use this as an example. Let's say that your mother, um, or your sister or a family member is out in Washington, D.C., and they become the victim of a crime. And the only witnesses to that crime are people that are here undocumented. And they refuse to come forward and bear witness to that crime and give your relative justice because they're afraid of the law enforcement uh, community. They're afraid of the police departments. They're afraid of being rounded up and sent to God knows where. Um, and so that is why, if you can't empathize with these people, then at least see it from that perspective that they will not participate in the justice system if they fear for their own personal safety and the safety of their family members. And that's why local law enforcement, state law enforcement agencies do not get involved in immigration enforcement.
And
Um,
and yet, the federal government, now that it has millions upon millions of dollars to give to police departments. Can you talk about these two? It's 287G agreements because they're like dangling the money. I know a Dallas police chief turned it down. So they do have the option to turn it down or receive it. But what are they buying with that money? What does the government get from a local police department if they're giving them that funding?
So they're buying cooperation with the local law enforcement agencies. And that's a great point that you just brought up because while on the one hand, the Trump administration is essentially defunding traditional grants, like I'll give you an example. We have a guest on tonight who's going to talk about, the war on drugs. Well, as somebody who worked, in a narcotics units for my entire career, I was incredibly familiar with the HIDA grant, which is the high intensity drug trafficking area grants that were provided through DEA and the federal government to law enforcement agencies for things like equipment, training. I mean, it was very broad in the way that we could use that money. Well, the Trump administration has eliminated that, and they've thrown all of their money into the immigration enforcement hat. And the grants that you were talking about, the money that they're dangling to these agencies that are now broke because the Trump administration defunded their ability to receive federal money for training and other enforcement efforts um, by their cooperation when it comes to if if somebody comes into their custody, whether it's through an arrest or just even a contact, if they determine or have a suspicion that this individual is here illegally or is undocumented, then they will immediately report that to an ICE official. So it's like it's basically like blood money. It's a bounty system buying their willingness to cooperate with these mass deportations. And it's all because they're having a very difficult time meeting these you know 3,000 deportations a week quotas that have been set by Stephen Miller and the Trump administration.
I'm glad that you said bounty because I saw that DHS claims that the cartels have put out, I think, was it $3,000 per? Like they had like a tiered system for people to attack ICE agents. I don't buy that. I don't buy that for a second. And I think it's been reported in the news that it's like DHS claims, but there's not any actual evidence that I've seen so far. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't. I look at it like this: like as somebody who's actually had a bounty put on their head because of the investigations that they were involved in. I haven't seen enough evidence generated by ICE that would, in my mind, um, nes- justify a cartel putting a bounty on ICE agents' head. In and of to say, are is the cartel's business really being so disrupted by these ICE agents and their efforts to go into communities and grab people that are here in an undocumented status off the streets? Like what, you know, and and I'm sure that the administration will tout, oh, we're seizing, thousands of weapons and millions of kilograms of illegal drugs. Well, as somebody who worked in the industry for the better part of 2 decades, I'll say this: never, ever, ever in my career um, was I involved in a significant seizure that my department did not jump on the opportunity to show off everything that we had seized in a very, very public manner. That's to say, the the prototypical photograph of the folding table stacked with guns, drugs, money, all the you know um, the spectacle,
Hmm.
and then the podium with the chief, and that just we haven't seen that at all. And that's when I knew, the Trende Aragua apartment complex raid was bullshit, because where was the press conference with Christy Nome and the podium and the folding table full of drugs? And she's probably going to watch this, and then she's going to say, "Oh, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go into the evidence locker from now on, and we're going to pull out old shit and bring that out." Which, hey, I've seen it done before, but again, I what would necessitate that level of attention from these cartels? I just don't buy it. I'm with you.
Yeah, and ICE has a credibility issue because, like you said, they love the propaganda videos. They have professional crews following them around everywhere. But also, the people who are fighting against this, everyone who is resisting, are also taking video, and that's what they don't want. They're trying to intimidate people, intimidating the press to keep people from being able to see what's really actually happening on the ground. Did you see? I'm sure you did because everybody saw it. The WGN producer who was insanely tackled. I think we might have video of that.
Deputy
If we
Brockman,
do, we
I
can
work
roll
for the
it.
WGN. Let them know.
I got you. Yep. Debbie Browning?
Brockman.
Brockman, WGN.
Looks like we just have the audio of it. Video's
You
not
guys want
coming
to
through
share
on
your
my end.
names too?
I
Or
can see the video.
I'm just going to cover
Okay.
your face?
Yeah.
So when you saw that, and I think they claimed that she had been throwing things at their vehicle, but then eyewitness reports did not corroborate that, and she was not charged with anything. What I'm seeing in a lot of these cases is there are absolutely no charges coming from any of these things. That they're just terrorizing people, and then maybe even locking them up for a day or two, and then no charges. In which to me feels like intimidation. Is that what you're seeing too?
Absolutely. I mean, I've had multiple conversations. Actually, I had last night on my podcast, Don Lemon, who was out in Chicago covering the protests. I think it's at the Brightview or Brentview facility, ICE
Broadview.
facility,
Yep.
Broadview ICE facility that's out there. And he called me immediately after he got back to New York, and he said, "Hey, Mike, I'm just telling you from what I saw. I know you used to be a cop, but," he's like, it all they were doing was instigating the protesters. And I mean, we've all seen now this, reverend who was out there. He was standing outside of the fence line, amongst maybe two or three other individuals, and was shot multiple times in the head and torso by ICE agents who were standing atop of a building with pepper balls. Again, he described that in an interview on CNN, where he said, they were laughing. They were laughing at us. It was like a big joke to them. And so that's just one of, countless
Mhm.
interactions that I've observed now over the past several months, in which, again, I can't justify that behavior. Um, were there occasions in my law enforcement career where I saw officers antagonize protesters? Sure, but not to the point where it appears to be the policy of that agency. It appears that that is the norm. Um, in and again, it's terrifying to watch, and it's incredibly disappointing.
Well, and
As somebody who wore a badge.
Well, and you said we talked about it a bit before the show that there is an agency or association that is speaking up uh, now.
Yeah, I mean, so there's an association. It's the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the IACP. And this is an organization that pretty much every single chief of police in the United States, as well as hundreds of chiefs from around the world, are members of. And they are now calling for more transparency from ICE. And I know that probably a lot of our viewers, if not all of them, are looking at that statement and saying that, that's it. That's the best that they can come up with. And I'm telling you that from this particular organization, and to have it come out, unanimously, is significant, because they normally don't say shit when it comes to critiquing or criticizing another law enforcement agency. And so I would equate this to, like, the dropping of a nuclear bomb.
Okay.
Um, it is very significant. And I mean, and I think that a lot of it has to do with the interactions that ICE has had with these state and local law enforcement agencies. I mean, we've talked before on our show. I've had conversations with agencies across the country in which citizens have come in and reported misconduct, excessive force, uh, you know, violations to local authorities. And when they go to reach out to ICE, they get zero cooperation. ICE refuses to let them know what agents were on the scene, and that's just something that I've never seen before in my entire career.
Well, and and it's basically like is it Shaggy? It wasn't me because I saw even there was a family. I think there was their 15-year-old daughter who was tackled on the lawn, U.S. citizen, knee put in her back, and when they complained about it, and they were told that, oh, I said we weren't even there. We weren't. That was actually a home, like a ring camera video from a robbery, which actually wasn't true. ICE
Yeah.
was in the area. ICE had pursued them, and so again, like the credibility is so freaking shot. And we don't have the video for that, but I'm sure people have seen it because it is circulating all over the place, and it's having a community impact. I was seeing like teachers are talking about how it's impacting the kids because they're sitting in class worrying if their parents at drop off or pick up are going to be taken. And the thing that ICE is doing that is very different than the first Trump administration is that they are staking out churches and
Mhm.
hospitals and courtrooms. And we saw that in Chicago. And so I think this is another reason communities are starting to turn and they're losing support from even the people who originally may have supported these mass deportation efforts. How callous is it? Like, to me, like waiting outside of a fucking church is insanity. W- In what world? Because I'm starting to see, I think a general in the military just stepped down. I'm starting
Mhm.
to see people who are going, I can't sleep at night. I'm not doing this anymore. Is busting into a church, is this going to be the red line for a lot of people?
No.
Give me hope, Mike. Come on.
I mean, I like, listen, I don't know how, like, I would have expected at this point, given, the visceral reaction that the vast majority of Americans are having to this agency, I would have expected hundreds, hundreds of agents, thousands of agents to resign their positions and to come and speak out publicly. And it's
Mhm.
just not happening. No one is doing it. And so, um,
I mean,
I think that a part of it has to do with the money.
I was gonna say we need a
Um,
GoFundMe for all the cops to quit their jobs, for all the ICE agents to quit, because I mean they're dangling all this recruiting money in front of
fifty
agencies.
thousand dollars. I mean, that, I listened to, To the vast majority of America, $50,000 is life-changing investment in their lives.
Yeah.
And this administration knows it. And I mean, they got, what is it, a $175 billion fucking budget, something like that. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket for the administration, and that's part of it. They know they're playing on Americans,
Because everyone's
struggles.
broke. I was like,
Right.
it's like as the economy continues to crash, which is another thing, we haven't even talked about that, about how crime spikes when poverty takes hold and sets in. And that's going to be something we'll have to talk about in the future. But now we have to talk about the war on drugs and the militarization of police. And so I want to bring in our guest, because I know he's here in the studio, Radley Balko. Welcome to Protect and Serve.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So collateral damage. Michael was just talking about it earlier in the show. Chicago, what happened in the Chicago ice raids and South Shore of Chicago seems like almost the entire building, everybody that lived there was collateral damage. Can you talk about what you're seeing as far as this escalation?
Yeah. So my first book was called Rise of the Warrior Cop, and it was about the militarization of police and the kind of fear that, or what I tried to warn against in the book, is this idea that we are, and Michael actually referred to this as I was listening earlier. There's been a transfer of military grade weapons and technology to police departments around the country from the Pentagon to these surplus programs, also through DHS. And that's created kind of a more militarized police force, both in terms of the equipment that they use, but also we've seen it in kind of police culture and the approach they take to the job. So you'd see, officers, you would see a various version of the phrase, whatever I have to do to get home at night, which is, much different than protect and serve or community service. But, the whole book was this fear, or the expressing these warnings of the police getting more like to the military. What I kind of took for granted in the book is that we had this long tradition in this country of keeping the military out of domestic law enforcement. And that's a tradition that goes back to the founding, and it's this fear of having soldiers in the streets, right? That's why we had an American Revolution in the first place, because the British Crown stationed soldiers in the streets of Boston, and there was violence and resentment and anger from that. So, I was worried about police forces getting increasingly militarized. What I never kind of thought would happen is what we're seeing now, which is a president deploying the military to U.S. cities for basic, for day-to-day policing. I mean, the National Guard in Memphis, where I'm in Nashville, but our Governor Bill Lee said the other day that they could be there forever. There's no plan to take them out. And so
Yeah.
The problem is that the military is not a cop and a soldier have two very different jobs, right? A police officer's job is to protect our constitutional rights, protect and serve. A soldier's job, as Pete Hegseth has put it, is to kill people and break things. These are not compatible skill sets, right? And I think over the years, a lot of politicians have conflated them, and that's an ignorance and a confusion on their part. But now what we're seeing is just the wholesale application of this idea that being a soldier is just like being a cop, only harder, right? It's like that's how we show we're really tough on crime, is we send soldiers into the cities. And Hegseth, the thing that's really disturbing about this is Hegseth has said over and over again, all he cares about in the military is lethality, right? He wants our soldiers to be killing machines. And we're also going to send the soldiers to the cities, to U.S. cities, and put them on U.S. streets. Like, let's put two and two together. Like, where does that end up, right? What do we get?
Yeah, they could train. They could train on military. They could train in U.S. cities. I mean, that's what Trump said.
Yeah. So I think what we've seen is just over the last 8 months, we've seen all of these pillars of kind of what we associate with the free society have come tumbling down and really astonishingly fast speed. So there's the soldiers in the streets, right? This is, again, it's a concept that goes back to the founding. Secret police, right? That's something we've always associated with authoritarian states. The idea that police should wear masks and hide their identities and be completely unaccountable. Our federal officers are already completely unaccountable when it comes to civil liability. The Supreme Court has made it, local and state police have qualified immunity, which I have my problems with, but it is some form of accountability of civil liability. The federal level, there's nothing. I mean, Supreme Court has
Right.
obliterated that. They in 2022 they got rid of Bivens entirely, so there's no way to sue a federal police officer.
Federal officer. Yep.
Now they can be criminally charged, but that would have to come from the DOJ, and we know that's not going to happen with this DOJ. So we basically have secret police who are completely unaccountable, right? Due process, right? That's gone by the wayside. We've seen people get scooped up. They're deliberately holding them in the worst possible conditions so that they will give up their due process rights and self-deport. So we've seen people here who are illegally, people who might have had legitimate humanitarian claims, just give up and leave because they've been held in such terrible conditions. Collective punishment. Again, this idea that we're going to punish entire neighborhoods because of a group of protesters. We've seen this in Chicago. A federal judge just got really pissed off about it, and now is making making ICE officers wear body cameras. We'll see if that holds up in appeal. But they are gassing entire neighborhoods because they don't like the fact that people are looking out for one another. That people are starting these Facebook groups where they're going to elementary schools where ICE officers are trying to arrest parents where they're coming to pick up their children, and they're warning one another about it. And ICE doesn't like that. So they're taking it out on an entire neighborhood. So all of these sort of basic fundamental principles of a free society that we've always kind of taken for granted as that would never happen here. It's happening here, one after another after another.
Well, so the people have been able to sort of adapt. And Mike, I'm sure you're probably even surprised by seeing how much people are resilient in the neighborhoods, fighting back, risking arrest. Like, I'm seeing so many people who I'd go, wow, is this a person who would risk, like a woman? She was like a trombone player in Portland in a band, and she spent her weekend in jail away from her 3-year-old. So when you're hearing Radley talk about this collective punishment of neighborhoods, like, what are your thoughts? Are you thinking, like, is this something that you would expect people to resist in the way that they are, despite all of these risks, not just to themselves, but to their whole community?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm actually quite disappointed that we haven't seen larger efforts, more, millions of people taking to the streets because of how egregious this behavior is. I was talking with a friend of mine that works for DHS now, and she, really is trying to stay away from media coverage and not watch anything, kind of putting her head in the sand. She's like, how bad is it? Because I know it's bad, but how bad is it? And I was like, you're radicalizing everyday average Americans against your agency. Like, that's how fucking bad it is. Like, everybody despises your agency and the way that it's conducting itself from the top down. And I was like, you can't just say that, listen, I'll put my law enforcement hat on as I have before, and I'll say this administration has a legitimate right to enforce a legal policy, which is immigration. That being said, the way that they're going about doing it is so inhumane, in that they are targeting, after telling the American people that, we were only going to go after criminals. And now we know that that's not the case. More than 85% of the individuals that have been detained and deported had no criminal records. And then, you've got that lie coupled with the fact that you have these agents themselves, the individual agents who are conducting themselves extrajudiciously, who are antagonistic at best. At best, their behavior is antagonistic. At worst, it's assaultive, it's violent, it's aggressive, it's vile. And it's not just, what we used to say in law enforcement, like, oh, don't let a few bad apples spoil the bunch. Well, this ain't just a few bad apples. We've got multiple operations taking place in multiple American cities, and we seem to have dozens upon dozens of incidents taking place weekly that I would describe as inhumane, disgusting, and honestly can't find any parallel to in my 20-year career as a police officer. And I'm not saying that, every officer that I worked with was a fucking angel. I'm not even saying I was. But this is just a whole other animal that, like Radley was saying, we have an agency in this country now that is unaccountable to the American people. They are non-transparent. They're violent. they're vicious, and it seems as though they are becoming the pit bulls of the Trump administration, not just for immigration enforcement, but for intimidation and fear into whole communities that Donald Trump sees as his political enemy.
Radley, where do we go from here? Because in the war on drugs, they've escalated to the point where they're blowing up ships in the Gulf. So
Due
if
process.
they're if they're because in your book, you're basically what you've said is what they were doing then to back in the day to in the war on drugs, they're now doing to American citizens, to American communities. So where do we go from here? Are they gonna be blowing up? I know they were talking about having missiles, a little missile launch party over the weekend, but where do we go from? It's terrifying.
So there are some precursors to what they're doing in the Caribbean right now. In the 90s and up to the early 2000s, there was a project where the CIA was working with the air forces of Latin American countries to shoot down planes that they suspected of smuggling illicit drugs, but there was no due process there either, and that whole project got at least temporarily shelved because they shot down a plane that had 3 white Christian missionaries from Michigan on it, and they mistook it for a drug smuggling plane and killed 2 of them, including a young girl. That exposed, the fact that they actually killed, some white people from Michigan, exposed, the lack of any sort of due process and the indiscriminate nature of that program. I think, unfortunately, I think that's probably what it's going to take for people to take what's happening right now in the Caribbean seriously. But it's lawless. I mean, they are committing, they're violating domestic law, they're violating national law. They are just indiscriminately killing people. And, the thing that's really insulting about it is that they're then later joking about it, right? You've got Vance saying, I don't think anybody's going to go fishing in the Caribbean for a while, right? I mean, you're literally saying that you are taking people's livelihoods away from them because they're afraid that you're going to murder them. And they think that's hilarious.
Right.
If it weren't, on some level, their callousness is just, all you can do is laugh because what else are you going to do? Yeah. You just get angry thinking about it.
Well, and they are taking away. Go ahead, Mike.
To Radley's point, I think it's really important that, our viewers understand that 25% of the time when the American military conducts these narco trafficking operations and they board a ship or they board a boat or they board any type of craft, 25% of the time it turns out that there's no drugs and it was unrelated to any type of drug trafficking effort. And so we've now had 4 Venezuelan watercraft that have been blown up, blown to pieces. And so, if you just go by, and these are law enforcement statistics, if you just go by those statistics, at least one of those 4 craft was completely unrelated to narco trafficking and was just innocent people.
And also, we don't get a large quantity of our illicit drugs from Venezuela, and we get almost no fentanyl, which is what they're citing as the reason why they have to do this. None of that comes from Venezuela. And at least the first 2 boats, I don't know about the last 2, but they weren't headed toward the U.S. They were headed toward Trinidad, as far as from what I've read. And I think one of them, maybe they claim to have found some floating cocaine afterward. But the other thing is we don't get the death penalty for drug smuggling in this country. That's not illegitimate. That's not what we do. So they're playing judge, jury, and executioner, carrying out the execution before anybody's even seen any evidence, and they're just thumbing their noses afterwards by the fact that just saying we don't have to show you the evidence. We're just doing this.
Well, if you put the pieces together, look at the administration is trying to say that Venezuela is we're at war with Venezuela. And so to me, this is just an effort to justify that, classification so that they can enact whatever that the act that the Foreign Enemies Act that allows them to deport people indiscriminately without due process, which is essentially what the administration has been trying to do and has done on occasion since day one of the mass deportation effort.
And that's bullshit too. I mean, Trump's reason for wanting to go to war with Venezuela is that he thinks Maduro, one, is emptying his insane asylums and prisons in the U.S. There's no evidence that that's happening, and two, he claims that Maduro is controlling Nicaragua, and U.S. intelligence officials said there's no evidence of that.
No evidence,
and so Trump fired them when they put out their report. So that's where we are in terms of like what's driving this and what's informing the decisions that they're making.
And yet they wonder why he's not getting the Nobel Peace Prize. Absolutely insane. So we only have a few minutes left, and we have No Kings protests coming up this weekend. And apparently it's just people who hate America and Antifa. And what else did Mike Johnson say? So how do people keep themselves safe this weekend? What should people look out for, since we're apparently all criminals now?
Is that one for me, or
Yeah, either of you. I feel like either
go
of
ahead, Radley.
I would just say keep your cell phones out. Record that we can look out for each other that way, and try to at least hold people accountable. They're clearly scared. They're scared of what this is going to look like. I mean, I think they're anticipating millions, possibly the biggest single day protest in U.S. history. They don't, they're calling it the America hating protest because they can't say no kings, because what's it look like if you're against the protest that's against kings? So keep it peaceful, keep it light, show your anger, but don't lash out physically, and keep your cell phones out, record what you see.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I agree. Record everything when you go to these events, and just understand that the administration is looking for any moment, any opportunity that it can to misconstrue somebody's conduct, a group's conduct, to justify declaring martial law, saying that that there's some type of hostile event. And so go out there, protest peacefully, film everything, and let your voices be heard.
Absolutely. Film everything. I think everybody should have a GoPro. It's like the people need body cams at this point. And if they know that we're always filming, sorry, can't take it off, it's built into my shirt, then perhaps we can get out of this mostly unscathed. I was excited that after the first No Kings, it was non-violent. I think there was an incident in Texas, but I think overall it was a non-violent, joyous event. I protest hopped throughout California, Southern California, and it was families and joyousness and music and dancing. And so the more joy that we can find in the community of fighting for our rights and keeping our democracy, the better. So I'm glad that we could have this conversation. It feels dark out there, but I still feel hope, and I'm excited to see what we're able to pull off this weekend. So Radley, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, welcome back every time. And everybody else, we'll see you soon, I hope.
Yeah. Take care.